turning on your mic or turning on uh, your video, that's totally fine. We understand. We can have conversation after the recording stops at the end of this. You can always reach out afterwards. But if you have questions or concerns or things that you want to bring up in the meantime, feel free to type in the chat if you're comfortable, or turn on your mic. It is not rude to turn on your mic and say something. We love an interactive moment. Okay. So thanks for joining us at Digital Inclusion, Strategies for Promoting Digital Equity in the Classroom. Once again, I am Lindsay Vreeland. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an Inclusive Teaching Coordinator here at CITL. And I'll be presenting with Lynn Wynn. Her pronouns are she, her also. And she's the other Inclusive Teaching Coordinator for our center. So today we want to make sure that we're exploring key concepts and barriers to digital equity. We're going to identify and analyze discipline-specific digital equity challenges, and we're going to develop some strategies for promoting digital equity. And I want to say before we get started that we're going to throw out some things that might not be completely within your power. You might not be able to buy computers for all of your students. That's probably not realistic. Maybe there's something that you can do within your center, within your program, within your department. But even if there's something that you can't actively do to put a tool into your students' hands, we can still be aware of the problem, and we can still do what we can to overcome and make sure that we're being flexible and mindful when we're signing things that are due in digital spaces, or we're expecting students to be able to access specific things. No worries, Jessica. Thanks for joining us. So to understand digital equity, I want to make sure that we have some definitions, we understand our concepts. So when we're talking about digital equity in particular, we're talking about access to and understanding of digital tools, technology resources, and this is regardless of circumstances. So that's where the equity comes in, right? So regardless of our students' income level, socioeconomic status, regardless of their disabilities, regardless of their geographic location. If we have students that live in very rural areas, they might not necessarily have access to reliable internet. So when we're talking about equity, we're talking about things that overcome these barriers, and we're making sure that students can do the work that they need to do with the technology, with the tools, with the resources that we want them to ideally be working with. We're also talking about digital literacy. So even if students have the tools that we want them to have, do they know how to use them, and do they know how to use online spaces? So digital literacy is skills and knowledge required to use these technologies. So do they know how to search for information? Do they know how to navigate websites? If you're asking them to use the oh gosh, I can't even think of online spaces right now. If you're asking them to use the online library space, do they actually know how to use that search bar? Do they know where to find databases? Do they know how to search within journal spaces? Do they actually know what they're doing? Or are you saying, go to this space and they're just trying to figure it out? Do they know how to evaluate resources? If they're finding news articles online, do they know whether or not those things are biased, or do they know whether things have authority? Do they understand who is funding those projects and how that might impact what information is being included? Do they know how to fact check things? And even things like using online calendars and messaging, do they know how to use the tools that we're expecting them to use in order to contact us, in order to turn in their work? Do they understand what Blackboard uh, requires of them in order to turn in work? Do they understand how to use Outlook to send us an email or to access the link to Teams to our online meeting? And then we're also talking about digital inclusion today. So, uh, how do we ensure that everyone has access and understanding to the technology and tools and resources that we're talking about within these digital spaces? And with that comes this digital divide. And we see this, excuse me, we saw this, and we continue to see this, especially because of lockdown, because of the pandemic. Um, Not only did it throw our lives into a tailspin and was very scary for a variety of reasons, but we saw that uh, not everybody had the same resources and not everybody had the same access to things that we were expecting within our country and obviously other countries as well. So we saw that people didn't have access to internet. We saw that people weren't didn't have access to computers, and if they did, maybe they didn't have working cameras. Maybe the mics didn't work. Maybe there were glitches within the system. They didn't have proper software on them to complete the work that we were expecting them to do. Um, and if they don't have access to the things that we're asking them to have access to, like if we have a class where it's online and we're asking people to turn on cameras, and we have students that don't have working cameras or reliable internet, are we docking them points? Are we putting them into a position where we're assuming them are a bad student just because they don't have access to things, maybe because they're embarrassed to talk about their lack of access, or they don't want to be uh, perceived as making excuses for the things that they don't have. And there's this cycle of inequity that happens, and it correlates with these other aspects of uh, our identity and things that we experience and situations that we live in that are often overlooked or are considered to be sort of specialized problems or specialized experiences. Um, but they build off of each other. So we're seeing there's a lack of equity that correlates to that correlates within specific races, within specific ethnicities, within geographical locations, especially people that live in rural areas. And that doesn't even mean that you have to be in an area that's very far from DeKalb. You might be in Genoa and not have reliable internet. There are correlations between ages and gender, income level. Um, and so all of these things work together and sometimes compound in ways that are uh, really putting students at a deficit when they're coming into the classroom because they didn't have access to the knowledge before. They weren't able to develop the skills, and they don't have access to the reliable technology right now.
Thank you, Lindsay. So we're gonna dive into some detail of the barriers that Lindsay mentioned. So the digital equity, particularly in higher education, is encompasses several significant barriers, including the economic, geographic, educational, and social and cultural barriers. As Lindsay mentioned, during the lockdown, we see the disparity, and even within the city of DeKalb, the North Annie Glidden area, where we have a lot of renters, a lot of apartment complexes. They did not have broadband internet until the city worked with the school district to make sure that they put something there so that student can participate school online from home. So the cost of digital tool and online resources is another at another level of barrier to digital equity. Additionally, subscription-based learning platform plays an extra financial burden on student, but at the same time, um, as an instructor of chemistry, large enrollment chemistry courses, because there's just one of me and 200 students, I didn't have a choice. So I did have to use subscription-based learning platform, but there will be strategy that we discuss later to see what we can do to minimize or lower these barriers. Um, so generally, those students from lower socioeconomic background often struggle to afford the necessary technology. The lack of standardized digital learning platform across various educational institutions, along with insufficient support for technology-based learning, further hinders digital equity. And the root causes of these barriers typically, generally include the persistent economic inequality that we face in America, uneven development of infrastructure, historical underinvestment in technology education for marginalized community, and a market-driven technology ecosystem that prioritize profit over accessibility. So in this workshop, we will examine these barriers and learn to recognize how they manifest in our discipline. We will also discuss strategy for addressing these barriers. And again, at any point, if you want to stop us to have a question or a discussion, please just unmute yourself and do so. So let's look at what the economic barrier look like. So I break it down into three categories: the socioeconomic disparity. So income inequality is one of those. So economic disparity often dictate access to technology. So with wealthier student and community, they enjoy better access to digital tool and better internet. The cost of internet service and equipment can be a significant barrier for low-income student, limiting their ability to participate in the digital world fully. The educational gap. So school in the underfunded area may lack of resources to provide students with adequate technology and digital literacy training, and this perpetuate the cycle of disadvantage. So at NIU, in the heart of DeKalb, a student have good, at least they have access to internet, but the high school where they come from, right, they already have some existing educational gap in their digital literacy that we need to be aware of. Um, Access to technology. So device availability. Not all students have access to personal device like computer, tablet, or smartphone. Um, and I was one of those students. I survived undergraduate school without a computer laptop. I use a computer from the library to do my homework assignment, but that was 20 years ago. Um, these days, even though 20 years forward, when I taught up until last year in my class, there only a small percentage of students who don't have access to a personal device. Um, and not all students have access to a smartphone. So a lot of the time they have to share or they use outdated devices, and that can hinder digital learning and their productivity. Affordability of devices. So high cost of purchasing and maintaining device can be prohibiting for low income family and student. Um, s- so be mindful of these barrier when we use technology in our classroom. Geographical barriers usually related to internet access. So rural and remote location, or even in the heart of the city, but the underserved community location, the poorer um, area of the city, can limit access to necessary infrastructure, such as fiber optic network, and those making it challenging to provide high-speed internet to this area. Urban and underserved area, even in city, like I mentioned, certain community may be underserved due to historical neglect or systemic discrimination, leading to a lack of investment in digital infrastructure. So resulted all this resulted in limited broadband access. Many rural and remote areas lack reliable high-speed internet due to insufficient infrastructure, and even in urban area, underserved neighborhood may face connectivity challenges as well. The next thing I want to talk about is educational barrier. So in education and training gap, teacher training, educator may lack of training to integrate digital tool into their teaching effectively, impacting digital literacy. And this would I've referred to the student high school experience, right? So when they come in, they may not know, they may not have the digital literacy that we require for our courses. Continuing education, opportunity for lifelong learning in digital skill is often limited, particularly for adult in low income or underserved community. Institutional barrier, um, inadequate funding. So insufficient funding for public school, for public initiative aimed at promoting digital equity can limit its reach and effectiveness for such program. And then the bureaucratic hurdles, complex processes for accessing public resources, um, such as subsidy for device or internet access, can deter eligible individual. This could be a student from applying to have access to these things. Digital literacy and skill. So the lack of digital skill, many student, particular low-income population, and though with limited access to the digital space, they may lack the necessary skill to effectively use the technology and digital tool and resources that we provide here at NIU. Language barrier is another it's not a thing to consider. So non-English speaker may struggle with digital interface, online resources, and educational material that predominantly available in English. So some of these things I mentioned here just so that we aware when we use digital and technology in our classroom. The social cultural barrier. So disability and accessibility. So for individual with disability, they may face barrier in accessing technology if devices and online platform are not designed with accessibility in mind, right? So like lack of screen reader, closed caption, or alternative input devices can contribute to this. The digital content accessibility, website educational content and digital platform must be accessible to user with various disability to ensure full participation. So your content, there's several tools that Lindsay probably will mention later for you, but the way that you can check for accessibility for your digital content that you put up for your courses. The cultural and social barriers. So trust and privacy concerns. Some student groups may have concern about data privacy and surveillance, and that could deterring them from fully engaging with digital tool. So for example, when you do online testing, Do you use a proctor program? Do you make the student turn on the camera and be recorded during taking exam? Be mindful that there's some concern about trust and privacy. The cultural relevance, so digital content that does not reflect diverse cultural background and experiences may alien or exclude certain groups of students. Um, the last thing is policy and regulatory barrier. Lack of inclusive policy. So, for example, inadequate policy and regulation can lead to unequal investment in digital um, devices and services. So, like at NIU, I guess it would look like so the department where you could provide computer lab for the student, but then we also have department where they couldn't provide a computer lab for student, for example. Um, Digital redlining. So this is practice by internet service provider that prioritize affluent area while neglecting low income or minority neighborhood that can exacerbate digital inequity. And we have area like this in the city of DeKalb. The North Anne-Clinton neighborhood is an example. So if we have students live there, they may not have access to good internet. So with all of that barrier that I just go through, I'm going to take a pause here and invite everybody to unmute yourself and share some of the discipline specific challenges that you face. So, in your field, what are the digital equity challenges that you are aware of? And have you tried? Do you have any strategy to address that?
Yeah, in chemistry, we do have some challenges at the beginning of the semester with students having difficulty to access the LabFlow platform that we use for the practicals. But over time, the school management was able to come up with a strategy that we adopt, whereby they create a channel that the student can communicate with us, and then we'll be able to address some of those challenges. And that's really helped because we observe a kind of very low um, cases of such number after the second and the third week of the semester. And then we don't have such again. So it depends on how the management responds to challenges when it comes to the use of digital and technology when it comes to teaching in the classroom. Another thing that I can remember with that is that some of the students come up with their uh, assignments, and then there is a space for us, especially on Teams, to address some of those challenges that they might have using the learning platform. And then all we need to do is just to engage them, calm them, let them know that they can do it, walk them through it. And it really helps because we observe increase in performance from the students.
So second, when I were the general chemistry lab coordinator, everything was on paper, and that was before the pandemic. So it sounded like, do you move the general chemistry lab into the online system? Do the student have to buy their lab manual online? Is a lab? Can you tell me a little bit about the online lab system?
Okay, the online lab system is for students to be able to view the manual using, through the lab flow. They are going to register for the lab flow. They are going to get the access code. And once they receive the access code, they log in, they have access to the lab materials, and then the report is also completed online, and the grading is also online. Everything is fully online. But when it comes to the real experiment, we engage with the students in the lab, and they make use of some of some digital devices for measuring maybe pH, temperature. We use Logger Pro. So it has improved. The exam is also done online because they have their midterm exam and they have their finals. And then the result is available on real time. So once we grade, they have access to the results. And the beauty of it is that they can, make comments about their results and let us know where they have challenges. And they can even have access to us by just sending us a mail that, oh, I'm stuck at this part of the assignment. Can you please provide information? And we do respond very fast and rapid because we are given between 24 to 48 hours to respond to our student challenges. And that has really improved the performance of the student over the course of the semester.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That sounds like it sounds great. Sound like you figure out the system as long as the student have access to the device and have access to good internet, they should be able to access the lab and the lab instructor like you, right?
Yeah.
How about Jessica and Neil? What does it look like in your discipline? Jessica, you are muted.
In Comms 100, we do a similar thing where everything is on, it's called McGraw-Hill Connect, the Connect platform. So they have to have access. They do all of their homework, their reading assignments through it. And we really struggle. Initially, it's just a struggle to get them to get the access code from the bookstore because they have to pay for it. And then a lot of them this year, there was an issue with something called Brightwave. So it was like a multi-step process just to get access to Connect, and that was a pain. A lot of students just really weren't able to problem solve themselves. So we had to walk them through, I struggled with it. So it was just a really difficult process for students just to gain access to the textbook. And then once we got them in, some of them were trying to access it with phones and iPads, and it just wasn't ideal. It's better on a laptop or a computer, so that caused some problems. Another kind of separate issue is a lot of us put our feedback in Blackboard. We grade in Blackboard, and we want the students to look up the feedback so that they can see, how did you do on that speech? Make sure you use that to improve on your next speech. But a lot of students don't know how to find feedback in Blackboard. So I've made tutorials to show exactly where you go and what you do to see the feedback and the rubric specific comments. I don't know if everybody's watching them, but just things that we kind of took for granted students would know how to find, we realized they don't. So those are some major challenges that we have faced. Those of us teaching online also run into issues sometimes with students. They don't have the camera, and sometimes they don't have the space, the physical space to create or to record their speech. So that can sometimes create an issue too. It's not necessarily a digital challenge, but it's kind of related to that challenge. So those are just some of the things that we see in comms.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure somebody will really appreciate your tutorial because I did that for my student too. I record short video of 2-3 minutes and don't know if they even watch it, but I did notice that the amount of email I receive about asking for where to find this is less, or I can just refer to the video. So I'm so glad you did that for your student. Thank you. And then the McGraw-Hill Connect, yes, it can be a pain in the beginning of the semester because for my 200 student per section class, the Chemistry 110, I use McGraw-Hill Connect as well. And what I find with the publisher, they willing to work with us. So like I would talk to them and see if they could like tell them all the challenges, the thing that they didn't do right, and then make you a suggestion on what you think they should do to help, and like kind of bring them in and delegate some of the tasks so that you won't be too overwhelmed. I assume you teach large class. Comm is a large enrollment class.
Yeah. Yeah, and I often do send them, you know, contact the Connect person to help you, or contact the bookstore to help you.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like I'm giving the students the runaround, you know, and so I would like to be able to help them, but I sometimes just can't. So yeah, we have to have Connect help us
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And maybe when the student bug connect enough, they would come up with a more robust system
Yeah,
so that they can sell their stuff, right? And then we can teach.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So I see Neil's okay. So Neil, microphone isn't great. So here, one big challenge for my classes is that we bring in a lot of guest speaker on Zoom, while it's generally more productive for students to join in to these call individually. It can be difficult for students with poor internet access or dated devices. Meeting as a group is generally detrimental to the class, but meeting individually can be challenging for some students. Yeah, that is so true. Um, Lindsay will share with you some strategy, and hopefully, you can take away a few things from those strategy. But thank you so much for sharing your insight about your class with us. So I want to highlight one success case study that happened here at NIU, at Founder Library. They have a laptop lending program, and they started it in 2020. I suspect probably because of the pandemic, but I sent my student here for student who don't have access to devices. So I include in this slide just two quotes from a Qualtrics survey that conducted by the library with students who participate in their laptop lending program. We have a whole lot more. But since 2020, the library has facilitated 3,500 laptop loans, benefiting 1,800 unique user. So these are the um, students who check out the laptop and use it throughout the semester. So many of our students face economic challenges and may not be able to afford a laptop or the one that can sufficient support their courses. Like this one student say that the laptop didn't have sufficient disk space for essential software like Adobe Creative, like Photoshop, like Illustrator that they needed for their class. So initiative like the laptop lending program at the NIU library contribute to promoting digital equity on our campus. They also loan other technology like scientific calculator. You'd be surprised. I teach general chemistry, and I had a lot of students who didn't have a calculator. And it's just like a simple calculator. If you take calculus, you probably need scientific calculator. So the library, I put the link in here, and we will share with you the slide after the presentation. But the library, very thoughtful when it comes to digital equity. They allow students to loan our laptop, scientific calculator, headphone, and DVDs player. And for recording too, I want to mention that the library also have a one button studio. So it's a space where students can come and record a short video for their classes, like for their speeches. So make sure you go check out the library website to find all the resources that they provide there. And I'm going to pass the mic back to Lindsay.
Thanks, Lynn. I just made notes, so I make sure that we include all of that information in our email that we send out after this, and then you all will be able to figure out the library one button, and you won't have to search on your own to find that information because yeah, the one button studio in the library is a great resource. If you are interested in making videos, we have a one button studio in the Seidel building also that's specifically for instructional faculty and staff. But the library has these resources for students, and they're able to use those resources. And I mean, it's it's high demand, right? Because there's a lot of students at NIU, but that might be a solution for somebody who doesn't have a space in which that they can do this sort of work. Because if you are in a dorm room or if you share a living space, then it's understandable that you wouldn't necessarily have a space that is comfortable for filming or is uniquely yours or that you can keep other people out of. So I just want to talk about some strategies really quickly. What can we do in order to promote digital equity or just understand where our students are coming from? So one great way to assess our students' needs is through surveys and check-ins. These might be anonymous, especially at first. There is a lot of shame that comes with not having access to things. And we know as individuals that it doesn't mean that they're bad students or that they've made bad decisions because they don't have a new computer, because they can't afford that thing, because their parents couldn't provide these things for them, or because they're coming back to college after being gone for a while and they don't know what tech they need. But checking in and seeing if people are willing to like let you know what's going on, and just have a temperature check with the entire class and then know what you need to be sort of flexible with. There's also this thing where, you know, maybe their computer goes kaput in the middle of the semester and they can't afford to replace it right away. So there are other sort of challenges where they started off the semester and they thought they were on track. They thought they had everything they needed, and they did until this one thing happened. You know, they dropped their computer, their kid spills chocolate milk on it, whatever that looks like. So checking in with our students and making sure that they have the tools and the access that they need, but also assessing what sort of flexibility we might want to have and encouraging the people that don't have the things that they that you would like them to have to come and talk to you and have those conversations one-on-one. This is a great way to do that through surveys, through just general temperature checks, even creating a little space on Blackboard that's worth 1 point for them to fill out and let you know what's going on with them. We have a lot of free digital tools and guides at NIU. A big part of our colleagues' jobs, Lynn and I, our colleagues' jobs at CITL, are creating these guides and figuring out what tech and tools people need at NIU. And so we are newly a creative campus, an Adobe Creative Campus university, which means that our students have free access to Adobe Express, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, Firefly, and I think there's 42 apps overall that we have that are Adobe Suite apps that we have free access to now. So that means all students and all staff and faculty have access to these things for free. Some people were paying for Photoshop for art classes. We don't need to do that anymore. Students don't necessarily know how to use the Microsoft 365 apps. So a lot of students come from schools where they were using Chromebooks. Understandably so, they don't know how to use Word. They don't know how to access their OneDrive. They don't understand PowerPoint. They don't understand downloading things in different formats and file types. So giving them guides, showing them where they can access this stuff online, showing them they can access it on their phone even is really important. Showing them where Qualtrics is, how they can use that for their own research purposes. And even showing them that there's Grammarly that exists, that's free. You can put that on your device, you can put it on your phone, you can put it on your computer, and that will be another way to help them communicate with other people, whether it's that English isn't their first language, or there might be some sort of like learning disability, or maybe they're just busy and it's easier to use Grammarly than to go over 5 drafts of an email, whatever that looks like. This is a tool that's free for them that they can access really easily. Letting them know how to access the library website. How do they find things? What's going on with Husky Commons? Some students might have work on Husky Commons from their master's program, and now they're in the PhD program and they know it's there, but they don't really understand how that works. That happens. So can we explain to them what that looks like? Can we show them where to find journals? Do we show them where they can watch free videos through the library? That there are ebooks available, how to find that stuff. And Jessica already mentioned this, Lynn mentioned this. We can do videos, we can create guides, we can collect those and put them in a specific space in Blackboard, but we can also dedicate class time or office hours to showing students how to access things and how to go through things. If in week 1 of class, you want to do online office hours and dedicate that time to showing people how to get into Blackboard and where things are located, that's an amazing use of your time. You can then record that and put it online too, so that people who can't come to your office hours have access to that. That is never going to be a waste of time, whether student is in their 3rd year or their 1st year. There are so many things that are particular to your discipline or your class that they might never have used on Blackboard that would be beneficial for you to talk about with them. We want to make sure that we're being flexible for students that have limited access to technology and internet. This flexibility, by the way, works for everybody. An inclusive policy is going to benefit everybody in the class, whether or not they have this particular need or another need. So if we can provide options for assessments, so can we provide work that can be completed offline and then uploaded online? Some of us can't, right? Some of us have to use this technology that's online. What can we do to make sure that students have access to these things? Are there particular spaces on campus that we know computers are available for them to use within specific hours? Can we show them where those labs exist, et cetera? If we have synchronous classes online, can we record those things so that if students are disconnected because they have funky Wi-Fi, that they can still watch class content and not have missed big chunks. And again, that benefits all students. If you have students that are out because they were randomly hospitalized, those students are also going to benefit from those recorded sessions too. If we can use OERs for our classes so that students have access to free digital texts. If in comms and chemistry, that's not a possibility because we have to have these textbooks that work with these programs that work overall, that's totally fine. This might not be something that's doable for every discipline, but if we can have access to free digital stuff, that's great. Maybe we have access to YouTube videos that back up things that were being said in the textbook that students can then watch on their own time. They can access, they can have some follow-up information in a space that is free. Integrating digital literacy into your class, into the curriculum. So making sure you're spending time identifying where students can find reliable information, how to determine reliability, fact checking for people that are doing a lot of writing intensive work, research intensive work. Maybe they're doing some sort of research-based speech for comms. Do they know where to find that information? Do they know how to fact check things? Or are they just typing something into Google and hoping for the best? Hopefully it's not that one, right? But what sort of things can we help them figure out so that they know how to look for reliable resources. And then we can also help students access loaner and communal devices. As I said earlier, there are some computers on campus that anybody can access. The library has specific hours. Those hours change during finals. Let our students know that's what's going on. There are, as Lynn mentioned, there are loaner devices available through the library also. So students have access to those. Share with them the link so that they can actually check that stuff out on their own time. They can sign up. They could maybe come to your office during office hours and you could help them with that process too. Sometimes students are just afraid of filling out online stuff or going and asking questions. And that's just another sort of like layer of them not necessarily understanding digital spaces and what the expectation is. And there are also sometimes resources within your larger college that students can access, or maybe there's, technology within the main office that students might be able to benefit from that they have to use in that space. But okay, you can use this mic to record your speech, or you can use this headset or whatever. So making sure you know what's available to them and also telling students how to access those things, helping them access those things, that's huge. Okay. I want to make sure that we have enough time to answer any questions if they come up, or if there's anything else that you all want to share about like things that you've done to make your classes more equitable, thinking about technology and thinking about access and thinking even about digital literacy. But one of the key takeaways that Lynn and I have talked about when we're thinking about digital inclusion, when we're thinking about digital equity, is that we want to make sure we're not making assumptions about our students. We don't want to make assumptions about their resources or their skills. We don't know what their educational background is. Just because they're coming into your 400 level class and you were like, oh, well, they should have this background knowledge or something. You just never know. You just never know. Even if you know the person who taught them before, you just don't know what their skills are. You don't know what resources they're bringing into this space, which can be really frustrating, right? You can't make assumptions about our students and what they're able to do and what they're coming with. But I think it's just a really great practice to assume that you're going to be providing some flexibility for our students and that we're going to be meeting them with understanding and providing opportunities for them to disclose information where they can ask, can I have extra time? I don't have this resource. Where do I find it? And they can approach you with these problems, because it can be really, really embarrassing for students to admit that they don't have their own cell phone. So they were locked out of Blackboard because they couldn't do the verification. It can be really, really embarrassing for students to say that they've been writing their papers on their phone and they don't have a laptop of their own. And that's one of the reasons why they're having formatting problems or whatever. So if we can create an understanding that students can come to us and talk to us and do what they need to do in order to be successful, and that we want to do that with them, that's amazing. Thanks, Neil. So just keep in mind that we have economic barriers and we have digital literacy barriers that we just might not be aware of with our students. And they might not be willing to disclose those, especially immediately. But if we create spaces that are welcoming and we create open communication, they're more likely to talk to us about those things, but we can still be flexible with students that say, I need extra time. I didn't have access to this thing for whatever reasons. So I want to give us a few minutes. Are there any questions or anything that Lynn and I can help you all with before we say goodbye? Okay, if things come up, oh, sorry, Jessica, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, like we have these professional development things for us to help us, but are there places that students can go? I mean, I'm sure there are tutorials like how to navigate Blackboard. I mean, is there a place that you would recommend we send students? I mean, obviously we know that they can go to the library to get a laptop if they don't have that, but if they are just having trouble understanding how to use like Blackboard or navigate some of the tools here, are there some good resources for them?
I want to say yes. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. Maybe you can think of something, Lynn. But I will do a little bit of research and I'll have some stuff to send out. I know that student success does things sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what they do. I'm not sure if they would have programming at the beginning of the
Okay.
semester that would be particular to this. But let me do a little bit of research
Okay.
and I can send some things to you. Yeah.
And I'm never
That's a great
sure,
question.
I'm never sure exactly how much introduction students get to Blackboard, like when they come for orientation. I don't know if they get any actually.
And
So,
even if they get 3 hours, let's say, which is not going to be that, right? They get so much information in
yeah,
orientation too. It's
it's
just
overwhelming.
so overwhelming. So, yeah, it would never hurt to have an extra resource that they can go to talk to a person
Yeah.
one-on-one and just be able to make sure they can access things and they understand things, whether it's a specialist or whether it's, you. Obviously, those are all good options. But yes, I'm going to find some resources and I'll send them
Okay,
some
thank you.
things your
Appreciate
way.
it. This has
Of
been very
course.
helpful.
Yeah,
Of course.
Jessica, that's a great question. And I agree with Lindsay. I think most likely student success and student affair, particularly academic affair, they should have something. And if they don't and we couldn't find it, we'll make sure that we bring your suggestion to them.
Sorry, I'm making a note. Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining us. We will be sending out an email with all of our resources and particular things that were brought up by you all too that would be particularly useful for what you all need, for what you all are thinking about. So thanks so much for spending time with us. Once again, I am Lindsay Vreeland. We'll be sending out an email with our contact information so that if you need to contact me or Lynn, have one-on-one conversations about problems that you're facing, we will be so happy to do that. Anything else to share, Lynn?
No, I think that's good. Thank you so much for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.